Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Tarar Ivad Sahishnu Tarar Ivad Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Vikivalam Kalau Nastyeva 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 Katir Anyata. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vas Adigo Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is one of the highlights of my week. And as you can see from the background picture, Tonight, we will hear the description of the Rasa Dance, and time permitting, we will also read the questions posed by Parikshit Maharaj after hearing the Rasa Dance, and Shukadeva Goswami's responses, which put all of Parikshit Maharaj's doubts to rest once and for all. If you're ready to proceed, wherever you are in the three worlds, repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bolo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Very good. I was watching your lips on the screen to make sure that you were chanting. Very good. Okay, let us now pick up from where we left off. Last week, Krishna returned to the Gopis. After hearing the Gopi Gita, Krishna came out from his hiding spot, reappeared before the Gopis. There was some questions and answers. Now we pick up from that point. Thus, hearing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, speaking just to pacify them, the Gopis became very much pleased. And not only by hearing his words, but also by touching the hands and legs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they became completely relieved from the great suffering of separation. After this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead began his Rasa Dance. When one dances in the midst of many girls, it is called a Rasa Dance. So Krishna began to dance among the most beautiful and fortunate girls within the three worlds. The Gopis of Vrindavana, who were so attracted to him, danced with Krishna hand in hand. Krishna's Rasa Dance should never be compared with any kind of material dance, such as a ball dance or a society dance. The Rasa Dance is a completely spiritual performance. In order to establish this fact, Krishna, the Supreme Mystic, expanded himself in many forms and stood beside each Gopi. Placing his hands on the shoulders of the Gopis on both sides of him, Krishna began to dance in their midst. The mystic expansions of Krishna were not perceived by the Gopis because Krishna appeared alone to each of them. Each Gopi thought that Krishna was dancing with her alone. And above that wonderful dance flew many airplanes carrying the denizens of the heavenly planets, who were very anxious to see the wonderful dance of Krishna with the Gopis. The Gandharvas and Kinnaras began to sing, and accompanied by their respective wives, all the Gandharvas began to shower flowers upon the dancers. As the Gopis and Krishna danced together, a very blissful musical sound was produced from the tinkling of their ankle bells, from their ornaments and their bangles. It appeared that Krishna was a greenish sapphire locket within the midst of a golden necklace decorated with valuable stones. And while Krishna and the Gopis danced, they displayed extraordinary bodily features. The movements of their legs, their placing their hands upon one another, the movement of their eyebrows, their smiling, The movements of the breasts of the gopis and their clothes, their earrings, their cheeks, their hair with flowers. As they sang and danced, these all combined together to appear just like clouds, thunder, snow, and lightning. Krishna's bodily features appeared just like a group of clouds. Their songs were like thunder. The beauty of the gopis appeared to be just like lightning in the sky, and the drops of perspiration visible on their faces appeared like falling snow. In this way, both the gopis and Krishna fully engaged in dancing. The necks of the gopis became tinted with red due to their desire to enjoy Krishna more and more. And to satisfy them, Krishna began to clap his hands in time with their singing. Actually, the whole world is full of Krishna's singing, but it is appreciated in different ways by different kinds of living entities. And this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Ye yata mang prapadyante. Krishna is dancing, and every living entity is also dancing. But there is a difference in the dancing in the spiritual world and the dancing in the material world. This is expressed by the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, who says that the master dancer is Krishna and everyone else is his servant. Everyone is trying to imitate Krishna's dancing. Those who are actually in Krishna consciousness respond rightly to the dancing of Krishna. They do not try to dance independently, but those in the material world, they try to imitate Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entities are dancing under the direction of Krishna's Maya, and they are thinking that they are equal to Krishna. But this is not a fact. In Krishna consciousness, this misconception is absent. For a person in Krishna consciousness knows that Krishna is the Supreme Master and everyone else is Krishna's servant. Ekale Ishwar Krishna Ar Saba Britya. So, one has to dance to please Krishna, not to imitate or to become equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The gopis wanted to please Krishna, and therefore, as Krishna sang, the gopis also responded and encouraged Krishna by saying, "Well done, well done." Sometimes the gopis presented beautiful music for Krishna's pleasure, and Krishna responded by praising their singing. When some of the gopis became very tired from dancing and moving their bodies, the gopis placed their hands on the shoulders of Sri Krishna. Then their hair loosened and the flowers fell to the ground. When they placed their hands on Krishna's shoulder, they became overwhelmed by the fragrance of Krishna's body, which emanated from the lotus, other aromatic flowers, and the pulp of sandalwood. The gopis became filled with attraction for Krishna, and then they began to kiss one another. Some gopis touched Krishna cheek to cheek, and Krishna began to offer them chewed betel nuts from his mouth, which they exchanged with great pleasure by kissing. And by accepting those betel nuts, the gopis spiritually advanced. The gopis became tired after long singing and dancing, Krishna was dancing beside them, and just to alleviate their fatigue, the gopis took Krishna's hand and placed it upon their raised breast. Krishna's hand, as well as the breasts of the gopi, are eternally auspicious. Therefore, when they combined, both of them became spiritually enhanced. The gopis so much enjoyed the company of Krishna, who is also the husband of the goddess of fortune, that the gopis forgot that they actually had any other husband in this world. And upon being embraced by the arms of Krishna and dancing and singing with him, they forgot everything. Srimad Bhagavatam thus describes the beauty of the gopis while they were rasa dancing with Krishna. There were lotus flowers above both their ears, and their faces were decorated with sandalwood pulp. They wore tilak, and there were drops of sweat on their smiling mouths. From their feet came the tinkling sound of ankle bells as well as bangles. The flowers within their hair were falling to the lotus feet of Krishna, and Krishna was very satisfied. As stated in Brahma-Samhita, all these gopis are expansions of Krishna's pleasure potency. Touching their bodies with his hands and looking at the pleasing eyes of the gopis, Krishna enjoyed the gopis exactly as a child enjoys playing with the reflection of its own body in a mirror. When Krishna touched the different parts of the bodies of the gopis felt surcharged with spiritual energy. They could not adjust their loosened clothes, although they tried to keep them properly. Their hair and garments became scattered, and their ornaments loosened, as they forgot themselves in company with Krishna. And while Krishna was enjoying the company of the gopis in the Rasa Dance, the astonished demigods, along with their wives, gathered in the sky. The moon, being afflicted with a sort of lust, began to watch the dance, and the moon became stunned with wonder. The gopis had prayed to the goddess Katyayani to have Krishna as their husband, and now Krishna was fulfilling their desire by expanding himself in as many forms as there were gopis. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srila Shukadeva Goswami has remarked that Krishna is self-sufficient. Krishna is Atma Rama. Krishna doesn't need anyone else for his satisfaction. Because the gopis wanted Krishna as their husband, Krishna fulfilled their desire. And when Krishna saw that the gopis were tired from dancing with him, Krishna immediately began to smear his hands over their faces so that their fatigue would be satiated. In order to reciprocate the kind hospitality of Krishna, the gopis began to look at Krishna lovingly. They were overjoyed by the auspicious touch of the hand of Krishna. Their smiling cheeks shone with beauty, and the gopis began to sing the glories of Krishna with transcendental pleasure. As pure devotees, the more the gopis enjoyed Krishna's company, the more the gopis became enlightened with Krishna's glories, and thus the gopis reciprocated with Krishna. The gopis wanted to satisfy Krishna by glorifying his transcendental pastimes. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all masters, and so the gopis wanted to worship Krishna for his unusual exhibition of mercy upon them. Then, both the gopis and Krishna entered the water of the Yamuna, just to relieve their fatigue from the Rasa Dance. The lily flower garlands around the necks of the gopis were strewn to pieces due to their embracing the body of Krishna, and the flowers were reddish from being smeared with the kumkum on the breasts of the gopis. Bumblebees were also humming about in order to get honey from those flowers. Krishna and the gopis entered the water of the Yamuna just as an elephant enters a water tank with his many female companions. Both the gopis and Krishna forgot their real identity, playing in the water, enjoying each other's company, and relieving the fatigue of rasa dancing. The gopis began to splash water on the body of Krishna, all the while smiling, and Krishna enjoyed this. As Krishna was taking pleasure in the joking words and splashing water, the demigods in the heavenly planets began to shower flowers. The demigods thus praised the super excellent rasa dance of Krishna, who is the supreme enjoyer, and his pastimes with the gopis in the water of the Yamuna. After this, Lord Krishna and the gopis came out of the water and began to stroll along the bank of the Yamuna, where a nice breeze was blowing, carrying the aroma of different kinds of flowers over the water and land. And while strolling on the bank of the Yamuna, Krishna recited various kinds of poetry. Krishna thus enjoyed the company of the gopis in the soothing moonlight of autumn. After the rasa dance was over, the night turned into the Brahma-Mahorta, the night of Brahma, a very, very long period, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. The Brahma-Mahorta takes place about 1.5 hours before sunrise. It is recommended that one should rise from bed at that time, and after finishing daily ablutions, one should take to spiritual activities by performing Mangala Aratrik, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra as well. This period is very convenient for the execution of spiritual activities. And when that auspicious moment arrived, Krishna asked the gopis to leave. Although they were not willing to quit his company, they were very obedient and dear to Krishna. So as soon as Krishna asked them to go home, immediately the gopis left and returned home. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshama. Krishna, 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 Pahima. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. We have heard the complete description of the Rasa Dance as given by Shukadeva Goswami in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This was 5 chapters. As I mentioned some weeks ago, these 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela are the most confidential, most elevated chapters in all of the 335 chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And last week we studied the most confidential chapter, the Gopi Gita. So, after Parikshit Maharaj has now heard the entire Rasa Leela, some doubts, some questions have arisen. So that's how this Rasa Dance ends, with Shukadeva Goswami trying to alleviate the doubts of Maharaj Parikshit. So let's listen with rapt attention, because we're going to hear some very important philosophy so that we understand all of this properly. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prabhupada now comments. Sex desire is especially excited in the autumn season. But the wonderful thing about Krishna's association with the Gopis is that there was no question of sex desire. That first sentence is muy importante. Always remember this point. Continuing. It was, as clearly stated in the Bhagavat description by Shukadeva Goswami, of a Ruda Saurata, namely, the sex impulse was completely controlled. There is a distinction between Lord Krishna's dancing with the Gopis and the ordinary dancing of the living entities within the material world. In order to clear up further misconceptions about the Rasa Dance and the affairs of Krishna and the Gopis, Maharaj Parikshit, the hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam, told Shukadeva Goswami, "My dear Lord, Krishna appeared on this earth in order to establish the regulative principles of religion and to curb the predominance of irreligion. But the behavior of Krishna and the Gopis might encourage irreligious principles in the material world. So I am simply surprised that Krishna would act in such a way, enjoying the company of others' wives in the dead of night." This statement of Maharaj Parikshit was very much appreciated by Shukadeva Goswami, and the answer anticipates the abominable acts of the Mayavadi impersonalists who place themselves in the position of Krishna and enjoy the company of young girls and women. The basic Vedic injunctions never allow a person to enjoy sex with any woman except one's own wife. Krishna's appreciation of the Gopis appeared to be distinctly in violation of these rules. Maharaj Parikshit understood the total situation from Shukadeva Goswami, and yet to further clear the transcendental nature of Krishna and the Gopis in the Rasa Dance, Parikshit expressed his surprise. This is very important in order to check the unrestricted association with women by the Prakrita Sahajya class. In his statement, Maharaj Parikshit has used several important words which require clarification. The first word, jugupsitam, means abominable. So the first doubt of Maharaj Parikshit was as follows. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has invented himself just to establish religious principles. Why then did Krishna mix with others' wives in the dead of night and enjoy dancing, embracing, and kissing? Because according to Vedic injunctions, this is not allowed. Also, when the Gopis first came to Krishna, Krishna gave them instructions to return back to their homes. To call the wives of other persons or young girls and enjoy dancing with them is certainly abominable according to the Vedas. So why should Krishna have done this? Another word used here is apta kama. Some may take it for granted that Krishna was very lusty among young girls. But Parikshit Maharaj said that this was not possible. Krishna could not be lusty. First of all, from the material point of view, Krishna was only 8 years old. And at that age, a boy cannot be lusty. Aptakama means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is self-satisfied. Even if Krishna were lusty, Krishna doesn't need to take help from others to satisfy his lusty desires. The next point is that although not lusty himself, Krishna might have been induced by the lusty desires of the Gopis. But then Maharaj Parikshit used another word, Yadupati, which indicates that Krishna is the most exalted personality in the dynasty of the Yadus. The kings in the dynasty of Yadu were considered to be the most pious, and their descendants were also like that. Having taken birth in that family, how could Krishna have been induced even by the Gopis? It is concluded, therefore, that it was not possible for Krishna to do anything abominable. But Maharaj Parikshit was in doubt as to why Krishna acted that way. What was the real purpose? Another word Maharaj Parikshit used when he addressed Shukadeva Goswami is suvrata, which means to take a vow to enact pious activities. Shukadeva Goswami was an educated brahmachari, and under the circumstances, it was not possible for Shukadeva to indulge in sex, for this is strictly prohibited for brahmacharis. What to speak of a brahmachari like Shukadeva Goswami? But because the circumstances of the Rasa Dance were very suspect, Maharaj Parikshit inquired for clarification from Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami immediately replied that transgressions of religious principles by the Supreme Controller only testify to his great power. For example, fire can consume any abominable thing. That is the manifestation of the supremacy of fire. Similarly, the sun can absorb water from a urinal or from stool, and the sun is still not polluted. Rather, due to the influence of the sunshine, the polluted, contaminated place becomes disinfected and sterilized. One may also argue that since Krishna is the supreme authority, his activities should be followed. I'll repeat that. One may also argue that since Krishna is the supreme authority, Krishna's activities should thus be followed. In answer to this question, Shukadeva Goswami has very clearly said that Ishwaranam, or the Supreme Controller, may sometimes violate his own instructions, but this is only possible for the controller himself, not for the followers. Unusual and uncommon activities by the controller can never be imitated. So Shukadeva Goswami warned that the conditioned followers who are not actually in control should never even imagine imitating the uncommon activities of the controller. The Mayavadi philosopher may falsely claim to be God or Krishna, but the Mayavadi philosopher cannot actually act like Krishna. Yes, one can persuade one's followers to falsely imitate Rasa Dance, but one is unable to lift Govardhan Hill. So we have many experiences in the past of Mayavadi rascals deluding their followers by posing themselves as Krishna just in order to enjoy Rasa Leela. In many instances, they were checked by the government, arrested, and punished. For example, in Orissa, Thakur Bhakti Vinod also punished a so-called incarnation of Vishnu who was imitating Rasa Leela with young girls. There were so many complaints against this rascal, and at that time, Bhakti Vinod Thakur was magistrate, and the government deputed him to deal with that rascal, and Bhakti Vinod punished him very severely. So, the Rasa Leela dance cannot be imitated by anyone. Shukadeva Goswami warns that one should not even think of imitating. Shukadeva specifically mentions that if out of foolishness one tries to imitate Krishna's Rasa Dance, one will be killed, just like a person who wants to imitate Lord Shiva's drinking of an ocean of poison. Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison and kept it within his throat. The poison made his throat turn blue, and therefore Lord Shiva is called Nilakanta. But if an ordinary person tries to imitate Lord Shiva by drinking poison or smoking ganja, one is sure to be vanquished and will die within a very short time. Lord Sri Krishna's dealings with the Gopis was under special circumstances. Most of the Gopis in their previous lives were great sages, expert in the study of the Vedas. And when Lord Krishna appeared as Lord Ramachandra, they wanted to enjoy with him. Lord Ramachandra gave them the benediction that their desires would be fulfilled when he would appear as Krishna. Therefore, the desire of the Gopis to enjoy the appearance of Lord Krishna was long cherished. And that is why they approached Goddess Katyayani to have Krishna as their husband. There are many other circumstances also which testify to the supreme authority of Krishna and show that Krishna is not bound to the rules and regulations of the material world. In special cases, Krishna acts as he likes, just to favor his devotees. This is only possible for Krishna. Why? Because Krishna is the supreme controller. People in general should follow the instructions of Lord Krishna as given in Bhagavad Gita, and should not even imagine imitating Lord Krishna in the Rasa Dance. Krishna's lifting of Govardhan Hill, Krishna's killing great demons like Putana and others, are all obviously extraordinary activities. Similarly, the Rasa Dance is also an uncommon activity and cannot be imitated by any ordinary man. An ordinary person engaged in his occupational duty, like Arjuna, should execute his duty for the satisfaction of Krishna. That is within one's power. Arjuna was a fighter, and Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight for Krishna's satisfaction. Arjuna agreed, although at first he was not willing to fight. Duties are required for ordinary persons. They should not jump up and try to imitate Krishna and indulge in Rasa Lila and thus bring about their own ruin. One should know with certainty that Krishna had no personal interest in whatever he did for the benediction of the Gopis. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Namang karmani limpanti. Krishna never enjoys or suffers the results of his activities. Therefore, it is not possible for Krishna to act irreligiously, for Krishna is transcendental to all activities and religious principles. Krishna is untouched by the modes of material nature. Krishna is the supreme controller of all living entities, either in human society, demigod society, or in lower forms of life. Krishna is the supreme controller of all living entities and of material nature. Therefore, Krishna has nothing to do with religious or irreligious principles. Shukadeva Goswami further concludes that the great sages and devotees, who are washed clean of all conditional life, can move freely even within the contamination of material nature. How? By keeping Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within their hearts. In this way also, they do not become subject to the laws of pleasure and pain within the modes of material nature. How then is it possible for Krishna, who appears in his own internal potency, to be subjected to the laws of karma? In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna clearly says that whenever he appears, Krishna does so by his internal potency. Krishna is not forced to accept a body by the laws of karma like an ordinary living entity. Every other living entity is forced to accept a certain type of body by his or her previous actions. But when Krishna appears, Krishna always appears with a body, but it is not forced upon him by the action of his past deeds. Krishna's body is simply a vehicle for his transcendental pleasure, which is enacted by his internal potency. Krishna has no obligation to the laws of karma. The Mayavadi monist must accept a certain type of body, being forced by the laws of nature. Therefore, his claim to be one with Krishna or God is only theoretical. Such persons who claim to be equal with Krishna and who thus indulge in Rasa Lila create a dangerous situation for the people in general. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is already present as Supersoul within the bodies of the Gopis and their husbands. Krishna is the guide of all living entities, as is confirmed in the Katha Upanishad. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The Supersoul directs the individual soul to act, and the Supersoul is the actor and witness of all action. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is present in everyone's heart, and from Krishna come all action, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Sarvasya chaham Ridi Sani Vishta Matak Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. Krishna is the original person who is to be known by Vedic knowledge. He is the author of Vedanta philosophy, and Krishna knows the Vedanta philosophy perfectly well. Vedaischa sarvair aham eva vedya Vedanta krid Veda vid eva chaham. These so-called Vedantists and Mayavadis cannot understand Krishna as he is. They simply mislead followers by imitating the actions of Krishna in an unauthorized way. Krishna, the Supersoul of everyone, is already within the body of everyone. Therefore, if Krishna sees someone or embraces someone, then there is no question of propriety or impropriety. Now, some ask that if Krishna is actually self-sufficient, why should Krishna at all manifest pastimes with the Gopis, which are so disturbing to the so-called moralists of this world? The answer is that such activities shows special mercy to the fallen conditioned souls. The Gopis also are expansions of Krishna's internal energy. But because Krishna wanted to exhibit the Rasa Leela, they also appeared as ordinary human beings. In the material world, pleasure is ultimately manifest in the sex attraction between man and woman. The man lives simply to be attracted by women, and the woman lives simply to be attracted by men. That is the basic principle of materialistic life. As soon as these attractions are combined, people become more and more implicated in material existence. So in order to show them special favor, Krishna exhibited this Rasa Leela dance. It is just to captivate the conditioned soul. Since the conditioned souls are very much attracted by sexology, they can enjoy the same life with Krishna and thus become liberated from the material condition. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit also explains that the pastimes and activities of Lord Krishna are medicine for the conditioned souls. For if they simply hear about Krishna, they become relieved from the material disease. They are addicted to material enjoyment and are accustomed to reading sex literature. But by hearing these transcendental pastimes of Krishna with the Gopis, they will be relieved from material contamination. How they should hear and from whom they should hear is also explained by Shukadeva Goswami. The difficulty is that the whole world is full of Mayavadis, and when they become professional reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam, and when people, without knowing the effect of Mayavad philosophy, hear from such persons, they become confused. Discussion of Rasa Leela among people in general is not recommended because they are affected by Mayavad philosophy. But if one who is advanced explains, and people hear from him, certainly the hearers will be gradually elevated to the position of Krishna consciousness and liberated from material contaminated life. So fortunately, we have heard this Rasa Leela from the writings of Srila Prabhupada. So as we just read, we will all be gradually elevated because we are hearing properly. Prabhupada is presenting this according to Bhakti Vedanta, not Mayavad philosophy. Prabhupada explains according to Bhakti Vedanta. Another important point is that all the gopis who danced with Krishna were not in their material bodies. They danced with Krishna in their spiritual bodies. All their husbands thought that their wives were sleeping by their sides. The so-called husbands of the gopis were already enamored by the influence of the external energy of Krishna. So by dint of this very energy, they could not understand that their wives had actually gone to dance with Krishna. So what then is the basis of accusing Krishna of dancing with others' wives? The bodies of the gopis, which were their husbands, were lying in bed, but the spiritual parts and parcels of Krishna were dancing with Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, the whole Spirit, and Krishna danced with the spiritual bodies of the gopis. There is therefore no reason to accuse Krishna in any way. Shukadeva Goswami thus concludes this episode of Rasa Leela by pointing out that if a person hears from the right source of the pastimes of Krishna, who is Vishnu himself, and the Gopis, who are expansions of Krishna's energy, then he or she will be relieved from the most dangerous type of disease, namely lust. If one actually hears Rasa Leela, one will become completely freed from the lusty desire of sex life and elevated to the highest level of spiritual understanding. Generally, because they hear from Mayavadis, and they themselves are Mayavadis, people become more and more implicated in sex life. The conditioned soul should therefore hear the Rasa Leela dance from an authorized spiritual master, like Srila Prabhupada, and be trained by him so that one can understand the whole situation. Thus, one can be elevated to the highest standard of spiritual life. Otherwise, one will be implicated. Material lust is a kind of heart disease, and to cure that material heart disease of the conditioned soul, it is recommended that one should hear, but not from the impersonalist rascals. If one hears from the right sources with right understanding, then one's situation will be different. Shukadeva Goswami has used the word Sraddhanvita for one who is trained in spiritual life. Sraddha, or faith, is the beginning. One who has developed his or her faith in Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Supreme Spirit Soul, can both describe and hear. Shukadev also uses the word Anusrinuyat. One must hear from the disciplic succession. Anu means following, and Anu means always. So one must always follow the disciplic succession and not hear from any stray professional reciter, Mayavadi, or ordinary man. Anusrinuyat means that one must hear from an authorized person, like Srila Prabhupada, who is in the disciplic succession, like Srila Prabhupada, and who is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, like Srila Prabhupada. When a person wants to hear in this way, then the effect will be sure. By hearing Rasa Leela, one will be elevated to the highest position of spiritual life. Shukadeva Goswami uses two specific words, Bhaktim and Param. Bhaktim Param means execution of devotional service above the neophyte stage. Those who are simply attracted to temple worship, but who do not know the philosophy of bhakti, are in the neophyte stage. So this is why philosophy is important. We do not want to remain in the neophyte stage. So that's why throughout this Krishna book, philosophy is also provided by Prabhupada. Because without proper philosophical understanding, one remains a neophyte. We want to go to the second or third stage. Therefore, philosophy is mandatory. That sort of bhakti, the neophyte, is not the perfectional stage. The perfectional stage of bhakti or devotional service is completely free from material contamination. The most dangerous aspect of contamination is lust or sex life. Bhaktim Param, devotional service, is so potent that the more one advances in this line, the more he or she loses attraction for material life. One who is actually deriving benefit from hearing Rasa Lila dance surely achieves the transcendental position. One surely loses all traces of lust in one's heart. So this reminds me of one line in Bhagavad Gita, Pratyaksha Bhagadmang Dharmyam, that this Krishna consciousness, this bhakti, is something which is revealed to you. It is something that you personally experience. So here we just read how to tell if you are actually advanced. You don't need a certificate. You don't need a diploma. You can test yourself how advanced you are. Right here, what did it say? One who is actually deriving benefit surely achieves the transcendental position and surely loses all traces of lust in one's heart. So you see for yourself, how advanced have you become? You can tell for yourself. This is what I like about Prabhupada's science of Krishna consciousness. He gives you all the symptoms, everything you need to know, and then you just have to be honest with yourself and admit, no, I'm not on that platform. I need to improve. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that according to Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma day and Brahma night are periods of solar years expanding to 4,300,000 multiplied by 1,000. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Rasa dance was performed during the long period of Lord Brahma's night. But the Gopis could not understand that. In order to fulfill their desire, Krishna extended the night to cover such a great period of time. So, one may ask, how was this possible? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur reminds us that Krishna, although bound by a small rope, could show his mother the whole universe within his mouth. How was this possible? The answer is that Krishna can do anything for the pleasure of his devotees. Similarly, because the Gopis wanted to enjoy Krishna, the Gopis were given the opportunity to associate with him for a long period. This was done according to Krishna's promise. When Krishna stole the garments of the Gopis while they were taking bath at Chirgat on the Yamuna, Krishna promised to fulfill their desire in some future night. In one night, therefore, they enjoyed the company of Krishna as their beloved husband. But that night was not an ordinary night. It was a night of Lord Brahma and lasted millions and millions of years. Yes, everything is possible for Krishna because Krishna is the supreme controller. So since we have gone over time, I'll simply recite the prayers to Lord Nisringa for your benediction. Namaste Narasinghaya Praklada Klada Dayane Hiranya Kashipur Vakshaha Shilatanka Nakalaye Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsinga Yato Yato Yami Tato Nrsinga Vahi Nrsinga Hridaye Nrsingo Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadisha Hare Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Om Tat Sat.